Hi everybody, this is Jordi V and today I'm gonna show you how to make a beat in the style of Shlohmo. So for this kind of compositions, few things to keep in mind is there is a huge emphasis on sound design instead of music compositions, harmonies and chords. For the sound you might need to use some drum machine samples, some pitched R&B vocals, and to basically focus on a heavy use of distortion, compressions, and like organic VSTs that make your sound more organic, like isotope vinyl, RC20. So yeah, this is kind of the main focus of this kind of tracks. It's this organic feeling, this analog kind of feeling, I guess. So in order to start this composition, what I did is I came up with a chord progression that I played on for the pads. So let me find that. So the chord progression sounds like this. I will try to get rid of the effects just so you hear the original sound. So it's a preset on Serum called Bayside. It's for a pad. So if I get rid of the EQA, the overdrive, and the RC20, it sounds like this. With the effects, it sounds like this. So yeah, what I did is I added an EQ8, and I've decided to cut off all of the most of the low frequencies in order to give more room to the kick and the bass. I also used the EQ8 as a creative kind of tool, which is something you might hear in a lot of Toronto-based producers. They cut off the high frequencies in order to make their sounds more dark, which I did here. Later, I've decided to add some overdrive, which acts like a distortion to the sounds. And finally, I've used some RC20, so I've decided to add some noise, some wobble here to imitate this analog kind of sound and make it more wobble, more inconsistent, I guess. I've also decided to add more distortion here, some magnetic, yeah, and it sounds amazing, it sounds vintage, it sounds old. So this is the way you might achieve that analog sound if you don't have physical gear like physical analog sounds. Later I've decided to move to the melody, which I played on Pigments. I've kind of added the same processing, so cut the low frequencies, cut most of the high frequencies, also add some reverb and some RC20. I will let you listen to the lead. So yeah, together the two sounds like this. So yeah, later I've moved to the bass. So for this kind of beat, the bass mainly is super simple, and the sounds that you can use are like mainly Moog basses, Reese basses, this kind of heavy sound that takes a lot of room in the mix, something that you might over distort and makes it more present. So yeah, most of the compositions are driven by the bass, but you don't need to overcomplicate things. As you might see here, I've just drawn or played the root note of each chord, and I've kept it simple on harmonies and or music theory kind of level, but I did some heavy processing on it. So let me show you what I did with the processing on the bass. So here I've decided to use another preset on Serum called Fallen Rees. So I've tweaked some setting here, but I will not get into it, maybe within another tutorial based on sound design. So I've decided to cut the high frequencies again to make this sound more dark and more subby, I guess. Later I've decided to add some saturation. As you might see, the effects here is more dramatic with 6 dB of drive, also at 90% wet level. Later I've decided to use some sidechain compression and I've sidechained the bass to the kick. I've added some more overdrive. I've decided to cut the high frequencies just to keep the bass frequencies present within the mix. Later, I've decided to use these presets on Ableton for the bass mono to make my bass more mono and makes it less stereo in order to have more room and make up space for the other elements. And finally, as usual with this composition, as I said, I used some RC20 on it. So you can see for the RC20, I usually use the Vinyl 1 preset and I tweak it all along. So the bass sounds like this. What I like about this bass, it's have this initial attack, which is kind of like glide effect, which makes it super cool. So yeah, later I've decided to add this vinyl noise. Something which Shlohmo is known for it. It's used a lot of Foley sounds. You can use Foley percussions, Foley elements or loops like this, some field recordings, people speaking, and process it, add some reverb on it, just what I did here. Cut the low frequencies in order to not clutter the mix a lot. add some overdrive and like try to keep it in the background with playing with the volume. As you might see here, it's at -20. It's not that present, but you kind of feel it, but you don't need to hear it. It's something laid in the background and adding more emphasis and more richness to the composition without you really hearing it. So yeah, next element, I've decided to add this one-shot vocal that I found on Splice. It's mainly two vocals, sorry. So yeah, here, as I said, I've used some saturation from Decapitator from Sound Toys. I used some reverb and some echo boy. Here the distortion is used more as a creative effect and it's more bit dramatic, something you might get away with for this kind of compositions, but if you are making a more traditional, more like pop song, you might not use this amount of distortion. So yeah, as I said, the distortion here is used as a creative effect, I guess. If I turn it off, so yeah, it changes it adds more harmonic to the sound, something which makes it more present in the mix and gives it this aggressive feeling. Later, I've moved to the drums, so I start with this kick pattern. Let me just find it. So the kick is here. I will try to solo this 4-bar loop. So the kick sounds like this, nothing special on the kick, I just added a one-shot sample. I've decided to go with the glue compressor. I also activated the soft clipping to make it more present in the mix, so I'll let you listen to it. So yeah, later let me show you the hi-hats. So yeah, with the hi-hats I played a bit with the velocity here with the notes to make it more interesting and have this feeling that there is a lot of hi-hats playing while it's the same sample. What else? Later I've decided to add some extra percussion. So here is a rim shot. So yeah, nothing special. I just played kind of a roll here. Also played with the pitches. I played a locked octave lower to give it this more dark feeling, because if I've played it in the original octave or of the sample, it might sound a bit edgy, I guess, in the higher frequencies. While I'm looking for some low kind of sounds, some dark sounds. So yeah, I've decided to do that. Later, I've played this, I added this one-shot sample for the snare. So yeah, nothing special for processing wise. I've decided to layer it with this clap. I also added some extra percussion. Yeah, there's the tom. So yeah, there is this block, nothing special. There is also this sound. This is like a duk. I don't know what is this sound exactly, but yeah, it sounds like a conga, I guess. And finally, this tone. So something he also used a lot, as I said, is drum machine samples. I found this drum machine tone on Ableton stock library. I've decided to cut the low frequencies and add some echo. So yeah, you can basically get away with a lot of processing, delays, and reverb, and making your mix a bit cluttered, because it's this kind of feeling that you are going for, some analog kind of sound. So yeah, you have a bit more creative space, I guess, than with a classical kind of beat. So yeah, this is all the elements for this beat. I hope you learned something, and let me know in the comments if you need me to make a tutorial about a specific artist, or if you need me to elaborate about this song or some method I used or techniques. that I didn't explain well. So thank you for watching, and until next time, thank you very much.